After UMass lost to Oklahoma State in the NCAA Elite Eight in March of 1995, many felt the program had squandered its best chance to reach a Final Four. While Marcus Camby was returning for his junior season, the Minutemen no longer had stalwarts Lou Rowe and Derek Kellogg coming into the 95-96 season.
They knew that in Marcus Camby they had an emerging mega talent, that this was someone who has a tremendous athleticism for a 6'11" player who could potentially do some great things. They were so inexperienced in the backcourt. Edgar Padilla and Carmelo Travieso stepping in as the starting backcourt with no depth on that team whatsoever.
Each year guys were getting stronger and improving their game, and we just had to put it all together as a whole. You know, I felt coming into that season that I can put this team on my shoulders and carry us a long way.
And that vision started with Tyrone Weeks. When we started the season, I said, well, what do we want to do? And Edgar Padilla says, Coach, let's win the national title. Let's win the national title. And I said, that's a good goal. And Tyrone says, why don't we go undefeated? And my thought was, we're playing Kentucky. That's our first game. We're losing our first game. This dude's talking undefeated. And I said, okay, we'll talk about undefeated, Pullman. I was mad.
The Minutemen opened the season on November 28th against #1 ranked Kentucky at the Palace in Auburn Hills, Michigan.
Remember this, 93, Carolina was #1, Massachusetts beat them. 94, Arkansas was #1, Massachusetts beat them. Tonight, Kentucky's #1. Can they beat them? We're going to find out.
Something happened to Marcus Camby between his sophomore year and his junior year that he seemed ready to take on the mantle of being the guy. And it was very apparent in that first game. When as many good players as Kentucky had, he was the best player on the floor that day.
I was going absolutely berserk at the end of the game, and Marcus walked up to me and said, Coach, look at my eyes. Would you please relax? We're going to win the game. And I said, okay, big guy, and I sat down, and we won the game.
I think I had 32 points. They were a team that was picked to win it all, and we took that as a chip on our shoulder. We wanted to go out there and prove all the skeptics wrong once again. We rose to the challenge. We knocked off a #1 team.
Another #1 is about to go by the wayside, courtesy of the Minutemen.
The Minutemen were just getting started. 8 days later, UMass welcomed 10th ranked Wake Forest and star center Tim Duncan to the Mullins Center for the home opener. The game had a massive buildup.
I've never been a part of a game that was so overhyped, I would think. I mean, they were building up the rivalry with me and Tim Duncan like Wilt Chamberlain against Bill Russell.
And this long-anticipated matchup is underway.
I was really pumped up for that game, and I was not playing with him myself until I had to settle down in the second half. But that year, we proved that it was more than just me. It was a solid team effort.
If I was to pick in my lifetime one game which was so much like the first night of the Final Four, it was the Wake Forest game. Camby is at his best. The team, Dante Bright, everybody at their best, and just absolutely destroyed a team from the ACC that was supposed to be pretty good.
By the time the Minutemen headed to Hawaii for the Rainbow Classic just before New Year's, they were the #1 team in the country. UMass won that tournament, beating a talented Syracuse team in the final. Even a scary incident involving Camby in mid-January couldn't halt the undefeated run.
Marcus Camby had his mysterious collapse in the hallway up at St. Bonaventure.
The National Player of the Year candidate, Marcus Camby, went down.
To this day, I don't think anyone really knows what was responsible for that. He sat out 4 games, really as a precautionary measure, came back, none the worse for wear, and just started dominating people again.
The games weren't all laughers, but for 3 wonderful months, they were all victories for the Minutemen. UMass began the season 26-0.
This was probably the toughest schedule that UMass had ever played. And UMass would just win after win after win after win, always finding a way. And it just built remarkably through November and December and January and deep into February. And suddenly UMass was making a run at the first undefeated season in 20 years.
You talk about players playing like champions. I can still remember Edgar Padilla draining a 3 at Xavier when we had no business winning the game, or Carmelo draining shots at Pitt without Marcus Camby. We had no business winning that game.
With talk of an undefeated season reaching a crescendo, the Minutemen finally tripped up in late February against nemesis George Washington.
George Washington was always a thorn in our side. They always seemed to play us tough and always seemed to beat us. We had 26 in a row. They came in our building and beat us. I'm still upset about that one.
The biggest surprise to me was that the one regular season game they lost was at home. I didn't think that was going to happen. But that particular day wasn't their day. John got ejected from the game, and they probably would have lost even if he hadn't have been.
I think that's the only game I've ever been thrown out of in my coaching career, before or after. I've deserved to be thrown out of other games. That one I didn't.
With the undefeated season off the board, UMass refocused quickly. The Minutemen were hardly challenged in winning a 5th straight A-10 tournament title, beating Temple for the 4th consecutive season in the final, behind 7 three-pointers from Travieso. It guaranteed Coach Cal's team a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament for the first time in program history, and ended the regular season with a phenomenal 31-1 record. It had already been the greatest season in UMass history.
John Calipari had done something, the team had done something that every basketball coach at UMass before and since has been trying to do, which is to take the team inside Route 128. And they didn't just know Marcus Camby. They knew that the best backcourt in the country was Padilla and Travieso. They knew these guys. They were part of the sports fabric in the greater Boston sports community.
They did it together. It's amazing what gets done when no one cares who gets the credit, and that's how they played. Anybody that watched them said that they were like that on the court.
Going undefeated for such a long period of time, it was just awe-inspiring, and of course it instilled in the students here a great pride in the school. I call it our glory days. Those were our glory days.